Hey everyone, welcome back to another special edition of Three Pete After Me. Once again, we'll have a guest in studio, Curtis Mead, who played with the RiverDogs in 2021 and is in town for the Hot Stove dinner last week. Glad to have him in studio, a guy that's gone on to make the big leagues. He's the first Australian non-pitcher to start a playoff game and the first Australian to have a hit in a playoff game. We'll talk to him about that and his time in Charleston coming up. Curtis, great to have you back in town for the Hot Stove dinner. That's why we're so dressed up. This isn't the normal thing around here. But what was it like coming back to Charleston?
Yeah, super surreal. You know, I love playing here and a lot of fun memories here. So it's awesome coming back. You know, you kind of get that feeling of home a little bit, and you know, it feels like I didn't really leave, which is cool.
And you weren't here that long, and we'll talk more about that as well. But you were here. Played extremely well, and we're fortunate enough to end the year in High A. But everybody that has come through here has talked about first what you heard about Charleston before you got here, and for you, you know, you weren't a member of the Rays for all that long before you came to Charleston. What was that? You know, were there people talking to you when they found out you were coming to Charleston about what to expect?
Well, a little bit, but at the same time, like it was the first year that the Rays had taken back affiliation, I guess. So, you know, there are a few people that have heard about it or been to the town and, you know, have seen games and stuff. But there was a lot of unknown. And, you know, I think a lot of our group hadn't really played a ton of baseball outside of Florida, being younger guys. So there wasn't a ton of, you know, expectations, but a lot of excitement for sure.
I wanted to kind of start at the beginning, and I think you always hear about, you know, when somebody from Australia makes it to the big leagues, like they kind of have the whole country pulling for them because it's not been a place traditionally like Venezuela or the Dominican where there's 25 to 30 guys a year. So as a child in Australia, like, is baseball something that everybody's playing, only a few people, or what was it like growing up, and when did you kind of fall in love with baseball?
Yeah, so the story I tell a lot of the time is, like, in my high school, we had 1,500 kids, and I was the only person that played baseball in the whole high school. So it was like, you know, like you come back from the weekend sport, and I would play baseball and other sports as well. But, like, you know, I'd have 3 hits, and I'd be dying to talk to it about with my friends, and they just had no idea. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, we won. I had 3 hits." They're like, "Oh, is that good? Like, good job." So yeah, it was bizarre. You know, it probably wasn't until I was 16 that one I actually was like falling in love with the game a little bit more and playing at a higher level, and then 2, probably at 17, was like, damn, I might be able to go and play in America. Like, I didn't know what capacity that was going to look like yet, whether it was college or signing. But yeah, that was probably the point, you know, when I was 16, 17, that I was kind of like, damn, I'm kind of one of the better guys in Australia. Like, maybe I could kind of see what was going on. So it was a challenging experience at first, you know, with coaching and the facilities not being anywhere near as good as the ones in America.
So what, if nobody else, a lot of people start playing a sport because their friends are playing it.
Yeah.
So if nobody that you were going to school with was playing, what was it? How did you first get introduced to baseball?
So I didn't know this story a whole lot until this year when I started getting that question a lot. So realistically, I got it from my dad. Like, he loved to play, and I didn't understand why he liked to play. But the story goes that my dad's dad, my pop, was a massive cricket fan, you know, bat to ball, somewhat similar to baseball.
Right.
So he's in Darwin during World War II, and there are American soldiers there for World War II.
Sure.
And after the day's work or whatever, they would go and play baseball. So they taught my pop how to play, and then he would play cricket in the winter and then baseball in the summer. They just started a league after all these guys fell in love with the game. From the American soldiers. So then he had 4 boys, all 4 of the boys played, and then passed it down to me. So played T-ball, you know, at a pretty young age, 6 or 7. But, you know, at that age, it's in Australia, it's very low-key. You know, there's not a lot. You know, you play once a week, you train once a week. So it was a while before it started to grow, and it's still growing now, which is pretty cool.
Is that, you know, how difficult is it, you know, were you trying to watch Major League Baseball, or what baseball, when you became a fan, when it was passed on from your grandpa and your dad, like, could you watch? Obviously, the time difference is a challenge
Yep.
In terms of watching games in the United States. But, what was your experience with American baseball early on?
Yeah, so minimal. I always joke Australians are either fans of Dodgers, Red Sox, or Yankees,
Right.
and the only reason is because they were the only games that would get put on
Mm-hmm.
TV. So we would have like a Sunday night game on a Monday morning and like a Saturday night game on a Sunday morning, and that was kind of the extent of it. And you might not even get one week if no one's playing, but when the Red Sox play the Yankees and that sort of thing, they were on. So yeah, that kind of as well. Like just thinking back, like that's why lots of Australians like don't see a pathway or anything, because it's not a thing. Like
Right.
people don't play baseball and people don't play baseball at a high level. So it's starting to change a little bit now, which is cool. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
Is that something that when there is somebody, Liam Hendricks, whoever it might be, I was talking to you at lunch today about growing up a Brewers fan, Dave Nilsson was playing for the Brewers. Is it when somebody does make it and have a role year after year, is kind of the whole country become Brewers fans for Dave Nilsson, even though they're not on TV, but you just want to see the teams that those guys who are from Australia do well?
Yeah, absolutely. Liam's been awesome recently, but we haven't really had a position player that's played consistently for a while. So that's kind of
Right.
my goal is, it'd be cool that every day, now that it's available every day, you can turn on the TV and see a guy from Australia playing. So yeah, it was awesome. I've received a lot of support and, people came over and watched me play. So it was a really cool year last year.
Was it, we think of baseball and that's what we do growing up. And you talked about other sports. Like, are you good at cricket? Because people in America cannot understand cricket for the life of us. Like, you can explain it. It is a bat and a ball, similar contact, but obviously a different shape. The games can be extremely long. But did you play a lot? And is it supposed to be as hard to understand as we make it?
Probably not. It's not super challenging. My girlfriend actually, we go to games and I've tried to explain it to her and she's catching on, which is cool. But yeah, I didn't fully love cricket. I enjoyed it just because I like to do, I did everything as a child. But I more played it because all my friends played, and I had pretty good hand-eye coordination, so I was able to get away with it. But I played cricket like a baseball player, which is probably way too aggressive. I felt like I had to hit the ball far enough to run every time, and you don't have to run every time. Right. So yeah, no, it was good. I probably played it for 3 years. And then I didn't like the fact where if I got out, I had to sit down on the bench the whole day and not do anything. So it was pretty quick before I kind of decided that baseball and tennis were my summer sports. So.
And then you eventually realized, as you said, that you might be good enough to go play in America, not necessarily knowing what that actually looked like at that time when you're young. But I know you mentioned that the Phillies signed you first. And you were still in high school. Was that kind of an interesting, the guys from Latin America sign and then they go to the academy right away. There's not an academy in Australia. So was that sort of surreal that you're still going to school, but yet you've also been signed by a Major League Baseball team?
Yeah, and I think the craziest part about it was no one in Australia understood. I'm in high school, and every teacher at school is like, "Oh, that's great. Like, what are you studying?" I'm like, "No, I'm not studying. Like, I'm going to play, and that's it." And they're like, "Oh, well, what's your backup plan?" I'm like, "Well, hopefully you can play in the big leagues, and I don't have to worry about that for a little while." So that was probably the craziest part. Is like people didn't kind of understand, I guess, like what it meant. And because we have had people go to college in America more so for other sports, but like people understood kind of the college system, but they didn't totally understand, or I guess probably think it was possible that I could be going over there to just play and train. That was kind of just a bizarre idea. So that year was funny because I remember telling all the teachers, like, in Australia, you take like your year 12 result is valid for 2 years. And so it probably wasn't good, and my parents probably weren't pleased with it. But I told the teachers, like, I just want to pass.
Right.
Like, I'm going to play ideally more than 2 years, so I'm going to have to take this test again if I'm going to go and study again. So I told the teachers, if my work's good enough when we do a draft, like, you keep it and just give me a C. Like, that's good with me because I'm about to go and play. And I just kind of wanted to finish high school for my parents, and the money they spent putting into it. I felt like if I just kind of gave up 6 months short, that they'd be a bit disappointed. So, yeah, that was a bizarre year for me.
So then had you been to the United States prior then to coming to Phillies camp, or was that your first trip over here?
I'd been twice.
Okay.
So, 2012, I was 12 years old. Was probably the first time that baseball became a little bit of a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Yankee Stadium. Big Yankees fan, got to see some pretty cool games going on, and I didn't think it was a reality, but I was like, damn, this would be sick. Like, if I could do this. Then in 2015, another trip, and then probably 2 trips between 2015 and 2018 on like showcase trips.
Mm-hmm.
So, Baseball Australia is doing a really good job of taking kids to colleges and to get the exposure. One for them in terms of coaches like seeing these guys play, but more so showing the Australian kids the pathway and the types of opportunities they have, and hopefully getting them to fall in love with it. So I went probably once in 2016 and once in 2017 and played. But then, in 2018 was kind of the first time that it was purely baseball. So.
And I know you played a little bit of baseball professionally in the Australian Baseball League, if you will, when you were coming up. But was there sort of when you got to Phillies camp that first time, at the complex, like a welcome to pro baseball moment where you're like, man, this is tougher than it looks, or man, I haven't seen that before. I know Shane Sasaki, I've mentioned this before, always talks about his first professional at bat was Brustar Gratterall throwing 102 in a rehab, and he had no clue who he was yet, having come from Hawaii in high school, and he was like, is this what pro baseball is like? Did you have kind of a rude introduction, or was it pretty seamless for you?
No, it was definitely a rude introduction. I remember in 2018, Alec Boehm had been taken by the Phillies as a third baseman with the third pick of the draft, and I remember seeing him. I'm like, holy hell! Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be better than that guy. Like he's massive, and he was 21, and it was kind of the best thing that happened to me was like realizing, I was. The year before, I'd won the MVP for the under-18s in Australia, so I was like, I was one of the best players in the country for my age. So I think, I was kind of oblivious. So then when I went over there, I'm like, I'll be fine. Like I've always been one of the best players, and to go over and see him train and how hard he hit the ball, I was like, holy, I'm not ready, and I'm not where I need to be. But it was cool because I was still young, so I just turned 18. I said to myself, I just got to get there in 3 years. I've got time. So, it was a rude shock, but at the same time, it was awesome because I was able. I'd never seen a professional baseball player in Australia like that. And to be able to see that, I was able to kind of get to work, and I left in 2018 at like $165, and then when I came back I was $185, so I didn't look so much out of place, I guess. So if I hadn't have gone over that first year, I probably would have not wasted the 6 months before spring training the following year. But I was definitely knew what I was in for coming over in 2019.
And then you get traded early in your career, and I've talked to different players who've been traded that like they didn't realize that was a possibility of happening at that age.
Yeah.
So where were you when you get this call and you find out you've been traded to the Tampa Bay Rays, and what was going through your mind in that moment?
Yeah, so definitely the same thing. I mean, I got called from the Phillies farm director, who I actually created a good relationship with. And he started off by saying, "Oh, we've got some horrible news." And I'm like, "Oh my God.
Well, what can this be?" Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I just played my first season. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was I thought it went pretty well, and he's like, "Yeah, we've got some horrible news. This is super unfortunate." And I'm like, "Oh God, like."
Yeah, what are they going to tell me?
Maybe those high school teachers were right. I need to go back to school. So, and he was like, "We're sorry, but you've been traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. We thank you for your work ethic this past year." Kind of said some nice things. And I remember thinking there were two thoughts going through my head. The first one was, I didn't even really know that other people were looking at me yet. You know, like I'd played in Florida and no one came to the games. I was like, who the hell, why do these guys even want me?
Right.
And then the second one was like, I didn't really feel, I struggled the first year being away from home and not being comfortable. So to now have to go through meeting everyone all over again, like I wasn't super keen on that idea. And then also thinking like, oh, that could have been worse. Like
Right.
Josh
Yeah.
Bonifay had made it seem like this was horrible news, but that thought kind of came when Jeff McLaren called me and just said, we think you're an awesome player. We're super excited for you to be with the Rays. So that was kind of settling after he had called me. So yeah, no, I was in Australia and completely, my world had been turned upside down. So it was kind of crazy.
And I would imagine if you think about it as just a non-athlete, a regular person, if somebody is trading for you, it means they feel great about what you've done, again, in limited time.
Yeah.
So that has to be sort of a boost of confidence as well that, okay, this organization liked me enough to sign me,
Yeah.
and then this one was willing to trade a player and wanted me back or was determined to get me, that they were willing to trade one of their guys.
Yeah, and I had actually just gotten an agent, and I remember calling my agent and was like, hey, I've been traded. And he's like, no way, who to? And I was like, oh, to the Tampa Bay Rays. And I remember him telling me if there was one organization that I would be thrilled that you got acquired by at a young age, it would be the Tampa Bay Rays. And, I played well with the Phillies, and I felt like they liked me, and, like I kind of felt okay about it all. But then I remember when I got to spring training the following year with a different team, I was like, damn, these guys liked me a whole lot more than the Phillies guys did. The way they treated me was way better, and I just felt like they really wanted me there, and they actually saw something in me. So that was awesome. I think ever since that trade, that's turned my career around. Like, not that it was going poorly, but I felt like, like, damn, like these guys actually think I could do it.
Yeah, and I think everything that I've worked with a couple organizations. Obviously, you didn't spend a lot of time with anyone else, but like the players that the Rays draft and sign, the coordinators, the managers, Blake, Smed. We have to say Smed because he's in town and he's going to see you later. But I mean, just good dudes, right? Like they love baseball, but also they kind of care about you in a way beyond baseball as well.
Yeah, no, that first year I became like really good friends with a lot of the people in the system, and after them seeing me kind of work and train, and after meeting them, I felt like it was an awesome match. Like they really cared, and I really cared. I was across the other side of the world. I wasn't trying to waste my time. I'm trying to become the best baseball player I can, and I think they saw that, and they really helped me kind of get to where I am right now. So
you came here in 2021. Then, of course, after the 2020 season had to be canceled because of COVID-19, and everybody sort of handled that year off that you didn't expect differently. What was it like for you? I mean, first of all, it was crazy. Nobody had ever thought about anything like that happening. But how did you handle it to make sure that you were ready to go once baseball came back?
Yeah, so first off, I struggled. You kind of just like everyone did. I had nothing to do. I couldn't go and train. I felt like, my dream was taken away from me a bit. I couldn't do anything to get better.
Right.
You just weren't doing anything. So I was fortunate enough that my girlfriend was in Dallas, Texas at the time, and the Rays had told me that they want me to stay in America in case we are able to get up and running. So went there, and eventually, probably a month or two in, places started to open up. So then I was able to train a little bit, and also super fortunate that the Australian Baseball League got up in November. So I was able to play 20 games back home in Australia before spring training. So I felt like that had kind of given me a leg up over some other people.
And then 2021 happens, and I think everybody, you could kind of feel it. The ballparks weren't full, but everyone was so excited to come to a baseball game, to play in a baseball game.
Yeah.
And everybody was kind of starting over. Like spring training, I remember people telling me was like, guys talk about playing every day. If you're sick and you miss 4 days in a row, you feel like you've not been playing baseball for a month.
Yeah.
And then you don't play it for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that is kind of magnified even more.
Oh,
so how excited were you to get through spring training and then get to go to a full season club in a different city aside from the complex for the first time?
Yeah, so I mean, I had played in 2019, and then had like 2 reasonably good years in Australia. But I felt like in America I hadn't done a whole lot yet. Like I hadn't gone out and proven, I guess, in America that I could, like, I'm actually a decent player. Right. So yeah, super excited. I love Florida. I have a place there now, but I was done playing in Florida. I wanted to play in front of fans. I wanted, a cool atmosphere. So super excited coming to Charleston, knowing that they do really well with fans and stuff. So yeah, I was really looking forward to 2021 to kind of prove myself and enjoy playing baseball and traveling around with your team.
I talked to a couple of guys about how you find out where you're going to start the year when you're in minor league camp, and they said it's literally as simple as they post it on sheets of paper, and then everybody gathers around like you see in the movies about like a high school play or something, who got what role.
Mm-hmm.
You see that, and then you look at the guys who were coming with you to Charleston. And, again, you didn't know all of them all that well. It had been a while since you guys had seen each other or played together. What did you think when you guys showed up in Charleston? Because I didn't know all of you. We had been a Yankees affiliate when I took this job. But just looking at the roster, you're like, okay, I can't imagine there's a lot of teams that are going to be better.
Yeah, so obviously I didn't know a crazy amount. I probably just from a handful of spring training games, I hadn't really played with anyone. But I remember like watching some people, like a few people just stick out at spring training. You're like, damn, this guy's a really good player. And then when I read the list, I'm like, oh my God, like I thought that guy was going to double A.
Right.
Or, like it was just kind of nuts in that sense. And yeah, I mean, we like, I remember at spring training as well, bugging Blake. I'm like, there's a week to go. I'm doing lots of training with the Charleston guys, so I'm thinking I'm going to try and get it out of Blake, like if I'm going to Charleston and stuff. So, yeah, super excited for me not to be in the complex anymore, to go and play and kind of prove myself. But I remember, traveling here and the first few training sessions, felt like we had a really good team. And a lot of experience, some super talented college guys, some high school guys who were super toolsy. I think we were all really excited, and it showed. We were kind of the best team all year, which was pretty cool.
And I thought kind of the introduction back to minor league baseball was opening night. Everybody's waiting and waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brett Wisely, I think, was hitting 8th or 9th, and he hits 2 home runs on opening night. And he was a guy that you hadn't heard much about. He's in the big leagues now as well. Do you just remember like that happening? You're like, okay, this could be a special group of guys, a special season.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, Brett kind of came into that year a little bit similar to me. I felt like he had a little bit to prove and kind of some question marks. So that was pretty cool. I remember halfway through the season we were joking about it because he was up hitting first or second or whatever it was at this point. And I remember him and I kind of joking about him hitting 7 or 8 game one. And he said he wasn't pleased at the time, but he was never going to tell anyone about it. So that was kind of cool.
Absolutely. And you guys just kept on playing well. And as you mentioned, it wasn't like at that point you came in with a ton of publicity, you know, all these lists that people make, which I know that as a player, you can't necessarily let somebody who's making a list decide, how good of a baseball player you are. But people like me have to look at that to get an idea. And you came in, as a guy that people were excited about. But again, there was no, top 5 prospect in baseball or anything like that. And then I would imagine that your time in Charleston for a month and a half, 2 months was some of the better baseball you've played. Was there a moment where you're like, man, this is really fun because, whatever I'm doing, I'm getting a hit or 2 a game, 3 a game.
No, the first month was okay. Like, I played okay. I felt like a lot of the time at the start of the season, I just like to feel comfortable, get a few hits, just not suck pretty much. It's kind of the goal early. Then that second month, I remember feeling like, okay, I can kind of go for this. Like, I feel pretty good. Our team's awesome. The coaching staff's great. The atmosphere is awesome. I'm started to feel really comfortable. And I remember having 2 or 3 big weeks in a row. And that was kind of, my time in Charleston kind of put me on the prospect list and on the map a little bit. And, I definitely think that's down to being comfortable, enjoying the team, enjoying the coaches, enjoying the atmosphere. And, I think probably it was the best stretch of 2 months that I'd probably ever played in the minor league. So it was Charleston's definitely got a special place in my heart. So it's pretty cool.
And I you'll be happy to hear this now, but all of the other broadcasters in the league, and we talked to the Myrtle Beach guy on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'm always like, was there a player from that year or from the RiverDogs three-peat now? Because everybody doesn't like the RiverDogs right now because they're good. That you just couldn't stand when he came to the plate, and they're all like, "Oh, Curtis Mead!" Like he came to the plate, and we knew that things weren't going to go well. I can't stand that guy. But obviously, that's like a compliment because if people around the league are remembering you and hating when you come to the plate, then you're doing something right.
Yeah, no, it definitely got to that point. One of those big weeks was in Myrtle Beach. So that doesn't overly surprise me. It was definitely a cool experience, and I was fortunate that a lot of our players were really good as well. So it wasn't like I was the only good player on the team. So maybe I got a few more pitches to hit that I probably wouldn't have elsewhere. So it was a special year, and I think a lot of the guys on that team, we still talk all the time and talk about the time in Charleston. So it's pretty cool.
I think that one guy that has kind of followed the same career path that you have is Taj Bradley. He was here, was kind of an under-the-radar guy when the season started. By the end of it, he was the minor league pitcher of the year.
Yep.
You guys kind of went to high A around the same time. You've moved up. You made the big leagues around the same time. How much fun has it been watching Taj? I remember R.C. Lichtenstein, the pitching coach here, telling me, he just needs to believe he's better than everybody else because he has the ability to do that. So from playing behind him defensively, being in the same dugout, what's it been like to kind of move through the organization with somebody like Taj?
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. We the fact that we were in the big leagues at the end of the year together was pretty special. We kind of, it's cool kind of comparing stories and that kind of, because literally I probably went up 2 weeks before he did to high A, and then same deal. We both start in double A. I probably go up 3 weeks before Taj did. So, we've had some really cool memories together, and it's always fun watching him pitch. He is, he's probably had some more of the dominant performances I've ever seen. I remember here it felt like we were going to win every game that he pitched. We were going to score at least one, and he was probably not going to give up one. So he's one of my really good friends, and it's cool to that we've kind of been on the same journey together.
At the end of 2021, then you obviously were promoted from Charleston after about 45, 50 games. Finished the year with a lot of the same guys that started here in Bowling Green. Everybody I've talked to loves hitting in Bowling Green. Is that true for you as well?
Yeah, it did. It was a little bit nicer than Charleston.
Yeah, the wind's not blowing in too much. You don't have to worry about the river.
Yeah, Charleston can be brutal at times, but yeah, Bowling Green was a little bit refreshing. I remember hitting a home run early on and going, damn, that someone in Charleston's going to run that down. So I'm happy to be here. I remember, I think I hit 7 home runs in Charleston, and I reckon 1 out of the 7 was at home. So,
okay, you got to take advantage on the road trip.
So yeah, I felt like it's actually funny. It's similar to my Australian team. We used to always joke, get your hits at home and then try and hit some homers and stuff on the road, because there's no point trying to elevate the ball here. So
you ended up with 2 championship rings. You also spent the end of the year in Durham. They won a championship. So had maybe a thought that you might get a chance for 3. But I've always thought that of all the championships rings I've seen, like the RiverDogs 2021 one with the Holy City is right up there. When you received that, having not necessarily been here for those games in the championship, did it, was it special to you? Did it kind of bring back some of the memories from early in the year when you were here?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking to Taj and Alika and Brett and a few guys that have, and I remember Brett coming up, he's like, oh, I'm thrilled to go up, but at the same time, it would have been awesome to be able to kind of finish out that year and hopefully bring home the championship. So very thankful for the guys that did get it done. And I remember the next spring training receiving the rings. All of us guys that didn't play in the championship game, we were just thrilled, telling funny stories, kind of getting together. So it was really special to get the ring.
And then another special moment is obviously when you get told you're going to play with the Tampa Bay Rays. And you talked about coming to the U.S., going to Yankee Stadium, and never kind of processing that was going to happen. Now, obviously, you start to realize that as you're making your way quickly from level to level. But when you get told, you're going to the big leagues now, what is that moment like? Most of us can't ever imagine. But when you live that, what is it like to hear that?
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point, I remember going through the levels, this is great, I'm playing well, I'm going to keep going. And then when you get to AAA and you start to play pretty good, you can't help but wonder, if it's coming. Right. You think it's probably coming at some point, but at the same time, that year, I kind of got off to a slow start. I get injured, so all of a sudden I'm like, damn, maybe it's not this year. I come back and play pretty good, and Yeah, I kind of thought like best case maybe in a month's time. In September the rosters expand. So I was completely shocked. I remember the manager called a meeting, and at the time we're in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm thinking there's some whispers with the boys like, oh, who went
Right.
out and messed up? Like, we're probably getting grilled. But I remember when the manager kind of started to, get a bit emotional. That something good was probably happening, and yeah, that was definitely a top 5 day in my life. To be able to call my girlfriend, to be able to call my family was, that's kind of when it really kicked in. For them to be able to make the effort and come over and see the first kind of few games was awesome as well. So yeah, it's not really a feeling you can describe. It's I actually felt like a massive sense of relief. You worked your whole life and finally you're getting a little bit of reward for it.
Sure.
So it's pretty cool.
And then you just want to stay there as long as you can, right?
That's
so
right.
Obviously being the first non-pitcher from Australia to start a playoff game,
Yep.
First Australian with a hit, like how cool is that? That, if anybody in Australia, it's probably hard for you to think about this yet.
Yeah.
Someday you will, but if any kid is like, I want to play baseball and they're in Australia and they look at the first guy to do a couple things, your name is there.
Yeah, no, it hasn't fully kicked in, and I wasn't even aware that like those things hadn't happened
When
yet.
they happen, right.
Yeah, and I try not to get too caught up with it because I like to think that I've only kind of just
Mm-hmm.
beginning my big league career. But yeah, no, super special. Hearing from past guys that have played in the big leagues, and getting a bit of recognition has been awesome. The news articles and that sort of thing. So it's been cool. But hopefully I can get a few more first before I'm done, and then I can celebrate a little bit.
We're going to take the Trop out of it because, we don't want any bias there. But where's been your favorite place that you've been able to go, a big league stadium so far?
Two come to mind. Boston was awesome, just because the history and you've seen it on TV so many times.
Sure.
And kind of to be able to be there in contention. We clinched playoffs there. And Toronto would be another one. The atmosphere was awesome. I remember it was a day game at 1:00, and there was 50,000 people there.
Right.
And they're a playoff team. We're a playoff team. So playing a few games there was probably a highlight as well. I remember going back to Boston. The first game I played there, I started 2 for 2, and I remember standing on first base after my second hit, going, "This is just this is one of the points where this doesn't feel real.
This is what you dream about doing."
I don't know what I've done to deserve this. It's just a super cool feeling. So those two probably stick out, but I haven't been to all of them yet, so I'm looking forward to hopefully checking them all
and
off.
it used to be a longer time before every team visited a stadium. Now you play every team every year, so you're going to every stadium every other year at the very least. So is there one that you're really excited to eventually get to for the first time that you haven't been yet?
Probably one that hopefully I'm going to check off because they're in our division, but probably the Yankees is probably a cool one. Being there and watching games, to kind of be on the field and see the roll call that the Yankees do and that sort of thing, will be pretty cool. Hopefully we take the series from them and win. I'm not the biggest Yankee fan anymore, but yeah, that's
probably a good thing to say.
That'll be a pretty cool one. So
that's awesome. I think that when people try to think about playing in Major League Baseball and having the opportunity to do that, everybody is dreaming. So is it easy for you to, when you're at the big league level, to kind of stay in the moment and at the same time you're doing a job, but realize how cool what you're doing is, how many people care about it, and have jobs just based on you getting to go out and play a game?
Yeah, no, it definitely comes and goes. You have special moments where you're like, this is just insane. Like I remember the first time I went on the private jet that we take to another stadium. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's a little bit different than minor league travel, right?
Yeah, like this is just crazy. But then at the same time, you don't want to think it's too crazy because you want to continually work and get better and act like you belong there. So it's definitely, this year was interesting. It was definitely a fine balance between the two, but a lot of moments where I can think about where I was just like, this is nuts. Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel real, when you're kind of looking around at all the people watching you play, like it's just crazy. So.
All right, we'll end with a few more kind of rapid fire, just random questions. Is there a coach or somebody in the baseball world that has really affected you and meant a lot to you coming up, either early on in Australia or since you came to the U.S. that's really made an impact?
I probably got two. One was Chris Adamson, who's from Adelaide, Australia, my hometown. He was the high performance coach just in Adelaide at the time. And I remember saying to him, I want to really give this a run. Like I want to, if you can help me, I'm going to try and go for it. I'd quit playing AFL football. And I said to him, if we can train, like I'd love to. And every day before my senior year of high school, we'd meet at 6 a.m., we'd train for 3 hours, and then I'd go to school. And he did a lot for me. He gave me the opportunity in the Australian Baseball League when I was 16 to play. I still train with him. I train with him when I was home, and he does an awesome job. He's happy to get there early or stay later with me and train. So I definitely wouldn't be here without him. And the other one is probably Blake, actually, here in Charleston. He'll probably say it himself, but I was so annoying asking so many questions and trying to continually get better. But Blake was awesome the way he treated us as players. And the time he had, he really cared. Like he did everything he could to get us to the next level, and he was super honest, which I appreciated. He didn't try and glorify things, so that was really cool. And I still speak to him all the time. Obviously, he's still involved with the Rays, but they're probably the main two that stick out.
Is there anybody that is a major league pitcher that you can't wait to face?
Not particularly. I'd probably say two that stick out that would be cool to get before they retire would be Verlander and Scherzer.
That's a good answer.
Be the two. Last year I remember I was hurt in AAA. The day after I broke my hand, Adam Wainwright actually had a start in AAA, rehab start against us, and I missed that one. So hopefully I don't miss the other guys. That'd be pretty cool.
If Max Scherzer gives you, the different colored eyes and he's staring in, are you gonna kind of growl back, or are you just gonna, play it easy?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that
seems like it would be a bold move.
Yeah, I actually spoke about that to some guys in the big leagues. Like, how do you look at a guy like Max Scherzer and actually just treat him like he's another human being? And how much success he's had. Like, how do you just step into the box and actually think you're going to get a hit?
Yeah.
It's definitely something that you've got to overcome. So I don't know. Maybe I have some time to prepare for it, but I'm not sure what I'd do.
And then anybody with the Rays that you've seen come through, or with the big league club, or even in the minor leagues, that did something and it just wowed you. Obviously, Caminero did that with a lot of people last year when he would barrel up a baseball. Was there anybody that you saw do something and you're like, wow, that's really impressive?
One that actually sticks out, and he's had to unfortunately battle some injury, but probably Colby White at 2021 year. I mean, Charleston, he would throw 10 pitches and strike everyone out.
Yeah.
It felt like they didn't make contact.
And when they did, we were all shocked.
Yeah. And then I get to catch the end of him in high A, and it's the same thing. I'm like, damn, I'm just hoping that I don't do terrible at high A.
Right.
And Colby's, once again, the best reliever in the league. And then to see him at the end of the year in AAA was like, oh, my God. Like, this guy's just throwing fastballs. Everyone knows it's coming, and they can't hit it. So that was probably the point. I'm like, I'm pretty happy that guy's on our team, and I'm not having to face him. So, yeah, it'll be cool to see what he can do this year.
Can you do, this is, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you do an American accent? If it's fair and you're not offended, I'll try my Australian accent and let you rate me. But do you ever try to do an American accent?
I do, but it sounds pretty southern.
That's fine. That's totally fine, because look where we are.
Okay,
I mean, we're in the South.
You give me a sentence and I'll imitate it. I find that's my best bet.
I'd like to have a hamburger with cheese.
I'd like to have a hamburger with cheese.
That's solid. That's pretty good.
Bad.
That's pretty good.
I've had plenty of time to practice. I get asked that a lot.
What's a sentence I can try? I'll give you. I would give you a solid 6.5, working on a 7.
Okay, I'll take that. Let's go. What's going on, mate? What are you doing this afternoon?
All right, I'm gonna give it a shot. What's going on, mate? What are you doing this afternoon?
That's not horrible, actually.
It's not horrible? Really? Okay. See, everyone in the office is going to hate that you said that because it's coming out now for the next couple months.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit British, but it's not too bad.
So I have a tough time. Sometimes I try to go British to Australian, and then I can't quite
Yeah.
I just say bloody
Yep.
in one and say mate in the other,
Yeah,
and
that
then
works
it
pretty good.
starts to kind of get to the middle. So
Yeah,
have you heard some bad ones, though?
Oh, horrible all the time.
Just
I had
terrible.
people in the baseball world that 90% of the time they talk to me is in an Australian accent.
Really? Like they can't turn it off, or
yeah.
they do it on purpose?
Yeah, I think half the time I think they just like think I can't understand them if they don't speak like that. Like Shane McClanahan all the time. When he talks to me, I'm like, dude, you can talk normal. Like, I don't need you
Like
to.
I speak English.
Yeah, like we speak the same language. So, yeah, that was actually funny story. With my first big league home run that day, he's giving me a hard time. Oh, you've been up here for a while. How come you haven't hit a home run? And he's like, oh, let's make a bet. If you don't hit a home run or a double today, you have to address all the Americans with an American accent for a day.
All right.
If not, I'll buy you a nice bottle of wine. And sure enough, that day is the first day that I hit the home run. So I think he was disappointed because I don't think he's heard my American accent yet.
So you need him to make more bets with you.
I do.
And then you're going to hit 380 and have 25 right away.
I think I just need a little incentive.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. Did you have anything that you'll remember from Charleston? Obviously, you're still very early in your baseball career, but and this is probably more a question when you're down the line of ways, but is there something that sticks with you from Charleston, whether it was just coming to the ballpark and playing with the guys with the Rays for the first time or just the city as a whole that stuck with you?
I think probably we had probably two games that stick out. One was I think we may have walked them off, and then we had the toilet paper night. Throwing the toilet paper back and forth with the fans. That was definitely a top night here that sticks with me. And I think just Thursdays in general. You know, the crowd is nuts. Our first Thursday, I'm like, oh my God, these people love us. Like this is like, you know, like we're just like younger kids like playing, and these guys love us, and the DJ's playing. So probably those two moments were some of my special memories here.
Awesome. Well, can't thank you enough for, again, first coming back to Charleston for the dinner last week. This will air a week after that, and for joining us today. I mean, you've been awesome to watch since you've left Charleston. We've all been, I know the fans are going to be excited to see you again. Everybody's followed you really closely. You've been great to us whenever we've asked for anything, and really appreciate it, and best of luck going forward.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back in town, so it's been awesome.
Everyone, I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. The first major leaguer to come on three-peat after me. We still have a lot of big plans, and we'd love to hear from you about who you'd like to hear from as guests. Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or X, and Instagram. Always love to hear from you, feedback, and people that you want to hear from the RiverDogs special run. We'll be back again next week with another guest.